to greet the cop.
We love how everyone is dressed to the nines all the time. Yeah. Such a wonderful event. The excitement, the horses, the coming down the stretch, the people just screaming in the air. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
The Great Kentucky Derby.
So tomorrow is, of course, the big race, and it's expected to be an open field, which means that any horse out of the 20 could win, but there is a lot of buzz around Renegade, Commandment, and Further Ado. And today is the Kentucky Oaks, which is a race for 3-year-old fillies or female horses. And everybody is wearing pink right now because it's also in celebration and support of breast cancer awareness. This is a big fashion show and a party all wrapped up into one as well, with 125,000 mint juleps expected to be sold this weekend, which is about 10,000 bottles of bourbon. But who's counting? So win or lose, everyone, John and Sandra, they're going to have a great time. So from Kentucky to New York and D.C., a big cheers to you.
And here's the great news. No rain in the forecast for tomorrow. It's not going to be particularly warm, but that'll make for a fast race, and you're not going to get wet.
That's right. The horses like the cold, and it's going to be a dry track. So perfect conditions for the Kentucky Derby. You're absolutely right.
Have fun and airmail me one of those mint juleps, would you? Appreciate it. We'll see more of you, promise.
I'll try and do just that. You bet. Thanks,
Have a great
John.
time. All right. President Trump set to arrive in Florida any moment now for his first public event since the third attempt on his life this past weekend in Washington. Then he tells our Peter Ducey he is not backing down.
This is going to be your first big public event since somebody tried to kill you on Saturday. Do you feel safe going to something like this today?
I don't even think about it, Peter.
This is a new hour of America Reports. I'm John Roberts in Washington. You know, the president, Sandra, people are trying to kill him, but he's just, I don't even think about it.
He keeps on going. I just want to comment, Carly loved the pink at the Derby. And I always think about the Derby because it's right. We got married on Derby Day, and I didn't realize that we had planned it like that. And everybody went missing from the party. And I thought, where is everybody? Everybody was at the bar watching the race. And it was like, we got a wedding reception going on here. So I always kind of remember that. May 1st, everybody.
Well, maybe some people had some more money in their pocket after the race to buy guns.
Right. Exactly. I should have thought of that. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. Welcome, everybody, on this Friday afternoon. It's a busy news day, and we are now awaiting the president. Supporters are already filling in at the Villages in sunny Florida. The president's heading there right now. This ahead of the president's big speech there, and as left-wing activists carry out May Day protests across the country.
And Fox is tracking the groups behind them with billions of dollars in funding, backing far-left activism, and calls for even more violence against the president.
Shameful. Shameful.
National correspondent Rich Edson is reporting live in Washington with more on who is behind these May Day protests. What are we learning, Rich?
Good afternoon, Sandra. Activists are out there protesting, leading boycotts across the country. They say they're refusing to cooperate today. No work, no school, no shopping. Coordinating many of these protests is a coalition called May Day Strong. It includes labor and teachers unions, Democratic Socialists of America and Communist Party chapters, climate groups, and
the communist
600 named organizations. One group here, Free DC, says it's protesting because the Trump administration has gutted local union jobs, is hunting and killing people in the streets, and building an empire of detention. In Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson applauded school children taking the day to protest.
This is a day of action, and shout out to all of the students.
Yeah, you're a crook. Shameful.
And our educators that have declared
You shouldn't even be in public office. You're no educator either.
Is in good hands.
Some critics say students should spend school days in the classroom, not at protests.
Right.
Instead of educating kids, they're giving kids toolkits, signs and markers and saying, hey, let's go march in the streets against Trump. They're even having kids hold signs that say teachers should be paid more money. I mean, they're using kids as pawns.
Fox News Digital has identified a sprawling network with combined annual revenue of about $2 billion organizing some 3,000 protests and events. Several participating groups are financially backed by Neville Roy Singham. It's a Shanghai-based tycoon investigated for funding Chinese propaganda. Some Democrats did tell Fox Digital they are concerned about traditional Democratic coalition members, like unions, coordinating or aligning with the more extreme groups. Sandra?
All right, Rich Edson, thank you very much. John?
All right, let's dig deeper into this with Ryan Priebus, Fox News political analyst, former RNC chairman, and former chief of staff to President Trump. Ryan, it's good to have you with us this Friday afternoon. So FoxNews.com.
Hey, glad to be back.
Fox News Digital did a deep dive on all of the organizations that are backing today's May Day rallies and marches. Here's what they said. A Fox News Digital investigation has identified a sprawling red-blue network with combined annual revenue of about $2 billion, organizing some 3,000 protests and events and advancing what critics describe as an anti-American agenda. They have called for Americans to skip work, school, and shopping. Red-blue, not meaning Republican Democrat, meaning communist Democrat. Calling for people to skip school when we have performance and proficiency levels in this country that are so terrible.
Well, I mean, there was a famous quote of Churchill that said that socialism is the philosophy of failure, ignorance, and the gospel of envy. And you can see that right in their mantra of no school, no work, no shopping, pure disruption. What I found, what jumped out at me on the article, John, was that they're going to spend up to $2 billion on these rallies. The total amount spent by the Trump campaign and the Kamala Harris campaign combined, just the two campaigns, was $1.8 billion. Now, that doesn't include the super PACs, but it does give you an idea that $2 billion in one day, for what purpose? The purpose of what? Now, on one hand, it's radical leftism, and we've talked about that and where this party's going, the Democrat Party, and we can talk about that. But there's another part of this, though, that isn't really talked about today. They're going to take $2 billion to do what? Number one, they want to farm people, meaning potential volunteers and paid people on the campaigns for the midterm. So they're going to gather up all these names of all these paid protesters, and they're going to keep in contact with them, and they're going to knock on doors, and they're going to try to professionalize this operation. The other thing is, what about voter registration? Are they going to do that? So, you know, sometimes there's more going on here than just being, you know, the wild Democrat Party that they are, and it's the same major donors. We know that. There's a campaign component here,
and there's a symbiotic relationship that's going on now too between some of these far left groups and mainstream Democratic establishment. Groups that are organizing some of these May Day marches and rallies include the Democratic Socialists of America, the People's Forum, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, the Answer Coalition, Code Pink, some of those organizations funded by Neville Roy Singham. He's that Shanghai-based billionaire who FoxNews.com is saying is promoting propaganda of the Chinese Communist Party. And then they are working together with some more traditional Democratic organizations like MoveOn.org, the American Federation of Teachers, and 13 local chapters of the Democratic National Committee. I mean, it's communism and socialism going mainstream.
Well, and look what's going on in their party. I mean, these are philosophies that are permeating to the highest levels. I mean, you've got this guy up in Maine, Plattner, who says very similar things. You've AOC saying similar things. And what's wild about this is that, you know, this philosophy has come up in the past. Came in the late 1800s. It's come up during the Great Depression. It's come up during the 60s. In fact, Labor Day itself was created in part by the federal government to move away from these radical labor movements, and so they moved away from the May Day and they went to September, and this whole May Day thing started in the late 1800s in Chicago during what was a peaceful protest about an 8-hour workday. It turned violent, but it kind of died off, but now it's coming back with the Democrat Party.
Yeah, well, so far what we've seen with these rallies is they're all peaceful, but certainly they are representing a point of view that's increasing in number and popularity in this country, and we'll see where all of this goes. Ryan, it's always great to catch up with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Sandra?
All right, so it's 8 minutes past the hour, and we are keeping our eyes on sunny Florida as we do await President Trump to arrive there at the Villages. He'll be speaking there as well. We're going to take you there in moments.
Plus, Ryan's just mentioned this, a progressive Democrat in Maine running on an anti-Trump platform. Now the left's leading candidate in a very high-profile Senate race, despite his radical past and a history of Nazi-linked tattoos. Robert Wolf and Caroline Downey here to weigh in, coming up next.
We need to use one of the best ways is through committee hearings and investigations. I want the Trump administration not to function because everyone in the White House is being hauled under subpoena in front of a Senate committee day after day after day. Not just because, one, we have so many crimes to investigate. At this point, we could probably be doing this for the next 30 years.
Shameful.
They were asked to skip school in some cities like Chicago, even skip out on shopping and work to participate in the Workers Over Billionaires demonstrations. They're happening in Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Minneapolis, and these are just some of the live pictures of them. John? I don't know. I mean, you talked about Chicago. Skip school, where the report cards are as bad as they are?
Yeah,
that's a bit shocking.
Students cannot afford to take one day off of school in Chicago. As Ryan Sprapus was saying, Labor Day, the first Monday of September, was created in order to try to get away from some of these May Day rallies. So many people taking work off today, maybe they should be required to work on Labor Day.
Yeah. You know, New York City, this is Union Square. This is obviously right downtown Washington. John, you can probably pick off exactly where they are. But they're not just demonstrating, they're marching, it appears. They are moving.
Yeah, and you know, I drove in this morning. I was trying to drop my son off at school, and we had to take a detour around a number of road closures because the police were preparing for these marches and rallies that were going on. I can't tell.
Anti-Trump's anti-conservative thoughts, anti-quality educations,
just off the mall, but not on the mall itself.
Anti-godly principles.
At the mall, but you know, there's somewhere near Capitol Hill.
And there you have it. So these are networks that have banded together to call for this mobilization of demonstrators to pop up in these cities all over the country for May Day protests. So, John, we'll keep our eye on these as they happen. But yeah, this is just a couple of the cities. These are happening all over.
Yep, and as we said, with Rhinestone growing in popularity, they're growing in number. And I'm sure
this is what you get when you take the 10 Commandments out of the school systems, take prayer out of the schools, and you teach more sexual stuff than you can imagine, down to even grade school kids.
Who once described himself
Shameful.
as a communist and sported a tattoo associated with Nazi concentration camp guards. He's running to unseat Republican Senator Susan Collins. Our chief congressional correspondent Chad Pergram's got the latest on the Plattner campaign. He's live for us in Capitol Hill. Chad?
John, good afternoon. Graham Plattner is part of a reconfiguration for the Democratic Party. The insurgency of his campaign in Maine forced Governor Janet Mills to quit. But Plattner carries a lot of baggage. He has a Nazi tattoo, and he opposes ICE.
Any road to a Democratic Senate goes through the state of Maine. And we know the Republican Party's coming for us. We've known it since the beginning, and we're going to continue in many ways just doing what we're doing as we continue to mobilize the people of Maine and organize them and show them that politics is theirs.
Democrats appear to be looking past candidate flaws. Abdul El Sayed is surging in the Michigan Senate race. He wants to defund the police. The party may be lurching to the left.
The Democrats are still not sure what the best strategy is for the party's identity. What we're seeing really is this question of a Democratic redefinition. This is a challenge for the Democratic Party.
Communist is what they're up to.
Seems to work well. In some places, a more radical message seems to work well.
Anti-godly principles.
But it's unclear if left-wing
Look at them. There they are right there.
Like Maine. Plattner secured the backing of progressive icons like Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Communist.
That race has always been about Mainers, and it's been about working people, and it's been about
communist.
Who folks are really resonating with and who they're excited about, and that's very clearly been Graham Plattner.
Now, Democratic voters prefer younger candidates. Plattner is 41. Janet Mills is 78. His likely opponent, GOP Maine Senator Susan Collins, is 73. Democrats are also swapping pedigree for pugilism. John?
Yeah, so the left makes a big deal about Pete Hegseth's Jerusalem cross tattoo, but they give a pass to Graham Plattner, who had a Totenkopf, which is clearly a Nazi symbol that was sported by Nazi concentration guards. They just give it a pass.
Well, Chris Van Hollen, the Democratic senator from Maryland, he was kind of sloughing that off, saying that at the time, Graham Plattner was going through a, quote, bad time in his life.
Okay. All right, we'll take that one to the bank, maybe. All right, Chad Perkins for us. Chad, thank you. Sandra?
Thank you.
Okay, so with us now on that, Robert Wolf, former Obama economic advisor and Fox News contributor, and National Review columnist Caroline Downey. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you here. So here's Graham Plattner, speaking of which, we'll pick it up from there. When asked if his politics are too radical, listen.
The idea that my politics are too radical I find somewhat laughable. You talk to any working person in Maine, Republican, Democrat, Independent, ask them if they think they live in a political system and an economic system that has their best interests at heart. Nobody says yes.
Robert?
Well, I am a staunch Democrat, but I have not yet supported really these populist progressives. I'm more of a centrist. I think it will be really interesting this year. For the Dems to take the Senate, we have to hold the 4 seats, which is going to be tough: Georgia, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Minnesota. And then we got to pick up 4 seats, which will also be tough. It puts in places like Maine and Texas, Ohio, which obviously Trump won by double digits on all of them. So I think it's tough. That being said, the midterms is probably going to be a change election. I would say that the Dems keeping the Senate maybe went from 20% to 40%, but it's an uphill battle. I think that Plattner has a lot of explaining to do, but I also think Susan Collins is going to have a lot of explaining to do on some of the Trump stuff with the war and affordability. So, you know, it feels to me like a flip.
Well, you might not be coming to his defense, but Senator Chris Van Hollen did defend those controversial comments from Graham Plattner. Here they are, listen.
The dude has not had a Nazi tattoo. I mean, let's be clear about what's going on here. I mean, how do you view that? I mean, it seems to be at least somewhat disqualifying and traditional.
Certainly historically.
He went through a really rough period, PTSD type period. And he has himself said there are lots of things he's done and said that he completely regrets. And I do believe people should have second chances.
Caroline?
I guess you gotta give Graham Plattner credit for surviving a scandal that would have been fatal to any other Republican candidate. He also dug himself a deeper hole on that Nazi tattoo. He blamed it on military machismo. I've had many relatives, my dad, my brothers, who served in the Army. They didn't come out with SS iconography, so that's a really silly, embarrassing cop-out. And I don't know why there are mainstream Democrats defending that, but look.
Shameful he was.
Maine
And
is a
is.
political maverick. My family spends a lot of time there. It can go red, it can go blue. You go to the rural areas, it definitely leans Trump. It's very possible that they follow the horseshoe theory of populism and they end up embracing Graham Plattner's economic populism of anti-oligarchy, war against the billionaires. But it's not enough to cosplay as a blue-collar worker. I'm sorry, it's just not. You have to embrace the values of the working class of Maine, and they don't like communism, okay? They generally support capitalism. They appreciate trade restrictions, actually, in the sense that, you know, the lobstering and lumber industries are really big there, and that's why, you know, protectionism to a certain extent has helped them in the past. But, you know, I just don't think that they are this vehemently opposed to capitalism and the American system the way that Graham Plattner is.
Well, Robert, speaking of which, these May Day rallies continue all over the country, as I pointed out top of the hour, New York City, LA, Washington, Chicago. This one we're looking live at Washington. Growing number of people skipping out on work, school, we're told in some cases. Some of these far-left groups telling you don't even go shopping on these days. Just take to the streets. I'm going to just get your thought on that.
I mean, I didn't even know about him until today, so I guess I'm not on that list. But this idea that you're missing school and missing work probably, you know, could have been better if we did it over the weekend. I'm always for protests that are peaceful. I'm not really sure what they're protesting because it doesn't look like there are American flags there. I don't know what flags those are. And so, you know, again, I think we're in the most polarizing environment, and unfortunately, it's the fringe that seems to be getting the most voice out there, even though that's the minority.
Well, I think it's fair to say sometimes we don't know what these individual protesters are protesting, but I can tell you what the group says. Mayday Strong, according to one leading organizer, the goal of the protests are to, quote, take action across the country to demand a nation that puts workers over billionaires, with many refusing business as usual through no school, no work, no shopping. Get your thought.
Yeah, it's not really a functioning society when you don't have work, you don't have schools, you don't have any of those things. I'm not really sure how any of that is sustainable, but I get that this is what brought Mamdani to power in New York City, was this kind of raw, rage against the machine, semantics and antics, but I just don't think most of the country is on board with this, because they know that this is not how life works.
It's interesting, as Sandra and John knows, I informally advised Mamdani to try to really work with the business community. And I think that there's a big difference between campaigning on affordability and executing his plan. And I recently saw that his polls have dropped below 50% because, everyone is for making things affordable. But I don't think the way to execute the plan, and he knows my view, is with the taxes or making the rich a boogeyman. I think you have to work with the private sector. It's the work I did for Obama, and if Trump asked me, I'd do the same. We have to work, the private and public sector have to work hand in hand to make us successful, and I hope New York City is successful. But well, there's ways we can fix that too.
It doesn't help when you're paying for everything with taxpayer money, or chasing away the biggest taxpayers like Ken Griffin, standing in front of his apartment, demonizing his wealth.
Or we could have growth and win with revenues.
There you go. Hey, maybe you could get that message across to your party.
I try. I'm here.
Oh, Lord. Okay, great to have you both. Robert, Caroline, thank you. John?
Senator John Cotton still ahead on America Reports, and we also get set to head down to Florida, where supporters are now gathering to hear from President Trump. Stay with us.
The New York Stock Exchange. Mayday protesters attempting to chain themselves to the barricades around the exchange. Police say 150 people are blocking multiple entrances and exits around there. So this video, goodness gracious. Thank goodness. Okay, this just in.
Work, no school, no training.
Right. So now we're looking live at LA. We'll continue watching what's happening in New York City and Washington. But meanwhile, as we mentioned, protests are happening all over the country, including Chicago and, as pictured here, Los Angeles. The crowds seem to have been growing hour by hour here. In some cases, we're seeing marches. Some cases, we're seeing crowds growing, signs up in protest of, don't go to work, don't go to school. In some cases, they have said, don't go shopping. This is the message. Workers instead of billionaires is the goal, according to those who have organized these protests. John?
Sandra, I get the no work and no shopping thing, but the no school? I don't understand why you're promoting keeping kids out of school. That makes absolutely zero sense. If you want to have a prosperous country, you've got to have an educated population, and we're doing a horrible job at educating our kids for the most part anyways.
Right.
Why would you encourage them to take the day off school? Just makes no sense.
Because they're communist is
We'll
why.
keep an eye on all of this for you. Meantime, President Trump set to speak in just a few minutes near the Villages in Florida with an eye on the midterms and a message tied to economic relief for working Americans and seniors. Fox Business correspondent Darren Vitello is live from Sumterville. How's it look like in there? Looks loud.
Hi, good afternoon, John. President Trump is on his way from Washington, D.C. right now, and I can bet he's going to like what he sees when he gets here. This gymnasium is packed with people. I wish I could show you the full scope, but I have media to the left and to the right of me, a lot of media on the risers right now. People even behind me right now, and thousands of people still waiting outside in temperatures that feel like 90 degrees. Let's take you outside so you can see that video. We spoke with some of the supporters. The line is wrapped around the building. One guy even told us he got here at around 11 o'clock last night, and he slept on an air mattress just to see the president speak. And before anyone got on stage to speak, we spoke with Senator Ashley Moody about the president showing up less than a week after the shooting in Washington during the Washington Correspondents' Dinner.
Showing up just 6 days after the third assassination attempt shows what he is willing to brave and the energy he has to make this country great. In fact, he says it all the time, and every time he says it, it hits me. He always says, look, this is not an easy job. I love this country. I would say the same.
And I would say the same. Stick with President Donald Trump, the wisest decision Americans can make.
This is the long game, remember. The president is talking about
There is no such thing as free lunches,
and he's also talking about the pain
like the Communist Party tries to tell you about.
AAA reporting the national average.
And those teachers and school people and unions trying to encourage people not to go to school, shame on you. You look at the school records, look at the teaching records, look at the grades levels, look at them. It's pitiful.
As soon as the war ends, the gasoline prices go up.
And Senator Moody just got off the stage. They're chanting USA, USA right behind me. This crowd is really revved up for the president, who's expected to get here within the hour. John?
The president, who's likely watching you right now, is way down there in Florida, often complains that the cameras don't show the size of the crowd, but I think we get a pretty good idea of how big and how boisterous it is. Darren Botello for us in Sumterville. Darren.
It's huge, Sean.
All right, Sandra.
The energy is building, that is for sure. Meanwhile, brand new comments from President Trump about U.S. operations against Iran as Israel reportedly gears up to resume strikes if the fragile ceasefire breaks. Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, will be here next.
Iran is absolutely desperate to make a deal. Of course, they have been totally decimated militarily. The United States military totally obliterated their ballistic missiles, their production facilities, weakened their proxies, achieved all of the goals outlined.
These days, 8900. That's 8900.
People diagnosed with mesothelioma have many questions. That's why we've offered a free book about mesothelioma for over 10 years. Mesothelioma is really all we do.
Call 800-500-5202 or
That's the smart thing to do. Go to church.
Listen, get the latest news, business, and news.
Bring Jesus into your heart.
Anytime, anywhere. Fox News.
And teach in our schools.
America is listening.
Government, education, history, math.
One of the country's top oil executives telling Fox today it is moving to keep supplies high as the U.S. carries out a blockade of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz.
The U.S. is...
Well, Chevron CEO Mike Wirth also said the U.S. is not only the biggest producer, but also the biggest exporter of oil and gas. 72% of our LNG exports, they're going to Europe right now. And Sandra, I want you to look at that. This is the armada of empty VLCCs. Those are the big ships that hold 2 million barrels of oil each. They're making their way to the Gulf Coast to fill up with American oil. This week, the U.S., for the first time since World War II, became a net exporter of crude oil for the first time. The world needs our oil as the Navy's blockade of Iran's ports in the Strait of Hormuz continues. Let's take a look at some dark fleet ships and tankers that are docked this morning at the port of Chabahar in Iran. They can't get into the strait. That's why they're stuck there. They can't fill up with or sell Iranian oil. The standstill has U.S. drivers paying $4.39 to fill up the gas tank today. The worry is that there's no movement at the strait and the U.S. continues to draw down our own inventories. Gas could hit $5 this month.
By the time we get to Memorial Day, we'll hit $5 a gallon of gasoline. And if the conflict continues through the remainder of the summer and we still don't have resupply from the Middle East Gulf, then we'll continue to see prices continue to rise through the summer.
President Trump acknowledging the possibility.
Gasoline type, but when this is over, you'll have a world without a nuclear weapon with Iran. If you allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, the world would be in great jeopardy. So we're talking about as soon as the war ends, the gasoline prices will go up.
He says they will fall like a rock. One more thing, Venezuela. Since the U.S. got involved there, their oil exports are at a 7-year high, a reported 1.23 million barrels a day, Sandra. So everything is shifting really fast, and it's coming to the West, specifically the U.S.
Really fascinating to watch. Lauren, thank you. Good to see you. All right.
In terms of the negotiation telephonically, they've made strides, but I'm not sure if they ever get there.
President Trump earlier talking about negotiations with Iran as Israel is threatening to resume strikes on Iran if the conflict resumes. Let's bring in Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Mr. Ambassador, always good to spend time with you. Thank you for joining us this Friday afternoon. So in terms of any renewed strikes on Iran, I assume that Israel would either need approval or the participation of the United States. What are you hearing in that regard?
Good to hear. Good to be with you, John. As always, I think it's just the other way around. The IDF is now on high alert tonight. The Israeli Defense Forces waiting the word from President Trump to see whether President Trump will renew the hostilities against Iran. I don't think Israel's going to be the first to pull the trigger here. And even if it were, you're right. Israel wouldn't do it without very close cooperation and a very bright green light from the White House. But as far as we in Israel understand it, we're waiting on the word from the White House.
So what's your thoughts on if hostilities were to resume, what targets would be gone after?
Well, I think at this time that they would target the energy sources, the power plants, the oil refinery centers, what wasn't targeted last time on Karg Island, and great emphasis put on opening up the Iranian blockade of the Hormuz Straits. That is knocking out the shore batteries. There are apparently hundreds, if not more, of these light craft that belong to the IRGC. The United States was very successful in sinking the Iranian Navy, its official Navy, but there's an unofficial Navy of small craft that can carry explosives. They can do like suicide boats. And if you've got 50 of those coming out of an aircraft carrier, it's going to be a challenge. So I think that's the opportunity to strike along the coast of the Strait of Hormuz and open it up.
Although the United States Navy does have a lot of expertise and experience in taking out small boats that are traveling fast on the open ocean, the president seems to be banking, at least for the moment, that this blockade is going to squeeze Iran to the point where it will capitulate. Here's what the Wall Street Journal wrote about it. A growing camp of hardliners believe Iran has to take the military initiative and start a shooting war again to send oil prices soaring higher and increase the pressure on Trump. They argue that the blockade goes beyond the sanctions that Iran has faced down in the past and amounts to an act of war that must have a military response. So according to the Wall Street Journal, it might be the Iranians that start shooting first.
Well, I read that this morning, and I thought to myself, Dirty Harry. And we're of an age, right, John? You remember the Dirty Harry movies? Go ahead and pull the trigger. Pull the trigger, make my day.
Yep.
And nobody can complain to Israel or the United States if Iran starts firing at us once again. And we take countermeasures, and those countermeasures just happen to knock out what remains of Iran's oil industry and energy-producing sites. So again, Dirty Harry, make my day.
Yeah, well, and Dirty Harry asked, I know what you're saying to yourself. Did he fire 5 bullets or 6? You want to try? So Iran appears to be weighing its options in terms of military action. Here's what the Wall Street Journal wrote. Iranian officials said Tehran could use previously unused weapons to attack U.S. warships, from submarines to mine-carrying dolphins. I don't know that they have any submarines, though. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has threatened to step up escalation by cutting phone cables in the Strait of Hormuz, which would disrupt internet traffic globally. I'm not sure what runs across the Strait of Hormuz that would connect the global internet, but I mean, when you take a look at that, it sounds like Iran is thinking about what do they do if they start hostilities again. It may not be good.
But still, they're not going to go darkly into that night. They like that quietly into that dark night. For them, this is an existential battle. It's an existential battle politically for the president, for the Republican Party, and if they may lose those midterm elections. But if the Iranian regime loses the war, they're going to lose their lives. The families of the 30,000 Iranians that they massacred back in January, they're going to come after them. So for them, they're going to pull out any stop they have, any type of out-of-the-box military action they're going to throw at the United States and throw at Israel. We have to be ready for it, and we have to redouble our retaliation against these steps and make it just completely punishing for the Iranian regime. So in addition to the economic pressure, which is extremely painful for them, they're losing between $300 and $500 million a day in oil income through the blockade of the Straits. And the economy was on the verge of collapse before the war. And the rial, the Iranian currency, is worth nothing, literally worth nothing. This may just bring this regime to the negotiation table in a realistic way to meet the demands of President Trump and of Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Well, that would be a good thing for the end of the war and for the economy, but I'm not sure how good that would be for the Iranian people in the long run. Michael,
that's the sad part, certainly.
Always great to spend time with you, sir. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Sandra?
All right, so as we await President Trump's big speech in Central Florida, we are learning more about a scathing new report from the DOJ that accuses the Biden administration of targeting Christians. Senator Tom Cotton is here in New York, and he will join us live next.
Is forced to choose between living by their faith or risk violating the law. That's the conclusion of a new DOJ report accusing the Biden administration of surveilling Catholics, prosecuting pro-life activists, and pushing gender ideology that clashed with traditional religious beliefs. Senator Tom Cotton reacts to all of this in just moments, but first, our chief religion correspondent, Lauren Green, reports live. She's in New York City. Hi, Lauren.
Hey, John. Well, the Department of Justice-led task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias released 14 findings that paint a picture of the Biden presidency that went beyond disagreement and moved to punishing Christians who held conservative religious beliefs in conflict with the administration's pro-choice gender ideology agenda. The report found the Biden DOJ brought multiple cases against pro-life activists, many of them Christians, under the FACE Act, Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. In contrast, following the Dobbs decision in 2022 that overturned Roe v. Wade, there was a wave of vandalism and arson targeting churches and pregnancy resource centers, but the Biden DOJ pursued comparatively few prosecutions under the same FACE Act. Christian colleges and institutions were scrutinized and penalized for holding traditional views on gender, accusing them of Title IX violations and threatening school funding and accreditation. The report also cited the infamous FBI memo out of the Richmond field office that warned of radical traditional Catholics as potential extremists. The memo was withdrawn after a public backlash, but the report concluded that the administration worked to suppress religious speech it did not like and used the weight of the federal government to marginalize certain kinds of Christians.
People on the left think of themselves as defenders of the separation between church and state, but instead what you have is the state authorizing and sanctioning certain types of religion over others.
Now, a spokesperson for the President Biden declined to comment, but Catherine Lawman, a former education secretary for civil rights under the Biden administration, told Politico that, quote, there was no religious discrimination that operated to infect any of our investigations. John?
Seems to me like somebody's got a lot of explaining to do, though.
Oh, yes.
Green for us. Lauren, thank you. Sandra?
Thank you, John. With us now to react, Arkansas Republican Tom Cotton, chairman of the Senate Select Intel Committee. Senator, good to have you here in New York City.
Good afternoon, Sandra.
People are shocked to hear the details of this. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we saw some of this in real time in the Biden administration, the notorious FBI Richmond memo about traditional Catholics. We knew that abortion protesters had been arrested for merely praying and singing hymns outside of abortion clinics. But we now see it goes much further than that. Disproportionate targeting of Christian institutions, sometimes on what would be facially neutral grounds for, say, student loan discrepancies or crime reporting, in which secular institutions weren't targeted, or the continued targeting and harassment of nuns. And I've spoken to Arkansans over the years, and they've been very concerned about whether or not they would be targeted for investigation, for prosecution, or for losing their 501c3 status by an administration that was so hostile to Christianity.
Well, now under a new administration, what do you tell them about their concerns? Is there going to be accountability?
Yeah, so first off, this report that the Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche helped lead under the President's EO from last year is, I think, a very important form of accountability to air exactly what happened. Second, I hope some of the deep state bureaucrats that were involved in this lose their job promptly. Third, there may be legal consequences, whether it's a criminal action or civil action for the deprivation of individual rights. And fourth, from my standpoint in the Congress, we're certainly going to scrutinize these agencies very carefully to make sure this rot has been pulled out by the Trump administration completely if we're going to keep funding them going forward. I know that's what President Trump and all of his cabinet heads and agency heads want. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done now.
I'm sure the American public would be happy to be reassured of that, Senator. Meanwhile, here's a statement from Todd Blanche. On this DOJ report, it reads, quote, no American should live in fear that the federal government will punish them for their faith. The Biden administration's actions devastated the lives of many Christian Americans. That devastation ended with President Trump. The Department of Justice will continue to expose bad actors who targeted Christians and work tirelessly to restore religious liberty for all Americans of faith. So work tirelessly to continue to expose those bad actors. Do you believe there's more out there?
I wouldn't be surprised just because the federal government is so sprawling, Sandra, and we know that the vast majority of these bureaucrats tend to be on the liberal side, especially in the Washington, D.C. era. And I know that Todd Blanche and the Department of Justice are working hard to expose them. And like I said, there's got to be consequences for them as well. They can't just keep their cushy career job, whether that's losing their job, facing civil liability or criminal prosecution. If they deprived Americans of their religious liberty, then they should face consequences.
A couple other things I want to ask you about. President Trump making news on Iran as he departed for Florida a short time ago. This was at the White House. Listen.
Iran wants to make a deal because they have no military left, essentially, and they want to make a deal, but I'm not satisfied with it. They're asking for things that I can't agree with.
Now, we had the Deputy Press Secretary on top of the hour from the White House. I asked, what exactly is Iran asking for? The president says he can't agree to. She couldn't further offer detail on that. But I want to get your thoughts on Iran, where you see things going next as we head into yet another weekend, Senator.
Well, I thought Secretary Hegseth and General Kane laid out the Armed Services Committee this week very effectively the great strides we've made since this war started. We have defanged and neutered much of Iran's military capability. They're still controlled by a revolutionary regime, but that regime's ability to threaten Americans here at home, around the world, and our troops and our friends in the Middle East is severely degraded. Now President Trump has used this blockade to put them in an economic vice. They're losing hundreds of millions of dollars a day, and they may soon have to shut off their wells, which could cause them permanent damage and billions of dollars of damage. So time is not on Iran's side here, and obviously the military balance of power is much more in our favor now than it was just 3 months ago, and certainly 10 months ago before we blew up their nuclear facilities.
All right, yeah, I want to end with this. There's some live pictures still coming into us all over the country. We're seeing these protests. Thousands have been called together for this rally for May Day. The leftist organizers of these demonstrations have asked those attending to skip work, skip school, skip shopping. More than 500 events are planned all over the country. The group's organizer calls this May Day Strong, says the goal is to, quote, take action across the country to demand a nation that puts workers over billionaires, with many refusing business as usual through no school, no work, no shopping. You're looking live in New York City, Union Square here in New York City. We just saw some arrests take place outside the New York Stock Exchange, screen right, Los Angeles. What's your thoughts on all this?
May Day has its roots in Marxist-Leninist thought. It's something that Soviet Russia celebrated every year, so it's not surprising that you see this new generation of socialists in the Democratic Party taking to the streets all around America. We should remember the roots of it, though, in Marxism and Leninism. That's the direction that the Democratic Party wants to take America.
Senator, we were looking at Chicago just a bit ago. That's a mess of a city, in my opinion. Born and raised there, I can't believe what has happened to that city. One of the biggest things that stands out to me is the lack of education and the horrific report cards that we're seeing for that city's children, the city of Chicago's children. Don't go to school? I mean, that's the last thing they should be urging kids to do, take the streets there and not go learn math and science.
Yeah, but I think that's why you see a lot of people voting with their feet, leaving Democratic-run cities and states and moving to Republican-run states where they can get better public services like education or infrastructure for lower tax rates and a friendlier business climate as well, not to mention more safety from crime.
Yeah, right here in New York City, Zohran Mamdani potentially chasing out Ken Griffin. I mean, he's one of the biggest taxpayers the city has, but he stands in front of his apartment and demonizes him. This is happening all over the country right now. We're covering it. And Senator, it was a pleasure to have you here in New York City. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be in
Good
studio
to see
with you.
All right, John, what else is going on?
Well, President Trump's about to land in Ocala, Florida, where he'll then make his way to Sumterville to this large waiting for him, according to Darren Battello. Very boisterous crowd as well. A lot of people from the neighboring villages have come over. I went to a big outdoor campaign event with President Trump back in 2016 at the villages, and so many people came out. The president is avoiding outdoor venues, as you can imagine, after Butler for a little while. But he's got a great crowd waiting for him there in Sumterville.
Did you show up by golf cart, John, when you
No, we had one of the few cars that were parked in the villages. But we saw so many people and so many Fox News viewers in the villages who love to drive around these stylized golf carts. They look like Rolls Royces. They look like Jaguars. I mean, it's pretty fun stuff.
Retirement community, you gotta be having fun, right?
Exactly.
John, I can't believe we just flew through another week. I can't even believe it. So that does it for us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Sandra Smith.
And I'm John Roberts. It's May already. Be sure to follow our social media accounts for all things America Reports. The Story with Martha picks up the news from here. Hi, Martha.
Hi there, I'm Martha McCallum, and breaking right now on The Story, we're waiting for President Trump at the Villages in Florida, as you just heard. He is clearly frustrated. He was speaking outside the White House before he took off a little bit earlier about the progress with Iran. Frustrated for sure. He says their leadership is a mess. It is, quote, disjointed in the president's words. He told reporters that one option that has always been on the table, in his words today, would be to blast the hell out of them. He said it's not really what he wants to do, but it's very frustrating trying to get any sort of agreement from this disparate leadership that doesn't seem to be on the same page or able to make any agreement. Retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward, former deputy commander of U.S. Central Command. He grew up in Tehran and has served in the Navy for decades. He's going to join us with his insights into the Iranian people, the leadership, and where we might actually be with all of this. But first, to the far left May Day protests that are playing out in huge numbers in the streets today in New York, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, across the country. And their motto is no school, no work, no stopping. No shopping, excuse me. No stopping and no shopping. So their key demands include tax the rich, no ICE, no war, expand democracy at the New York Stock Exchange. A lot of democracy and capitalism trying to take place there. They're not in favor of that. There are some arrests that are being made as well. Watch this. So with that, let's head over to Chicago, where senior correspondent Mike Tobin is reporting on all of this today. Hi, Mike.
Hi there, Martha. They certainly did bring out the numbers. Upwards of 1,000 people here at Chicago's Union Park. And the Chicago Teachers Union, as they're getting ready to march, was unsuccessful in their efforts to get classes canceled today to supplement the number of students who are here. But there certainly are a number of students here, and classes are not out yet. So one CTU official organizing a bunch of students, they called it a field trip, and said that these students were going to be learning a lot more out here about humanity than they would be learning in class. I talked with one young man who said his teacher encouraged him to walk out, another term for skipping school, to participate in these events. His name is Cody West. Here's what he had to say. Did your teacher encourage you to walk out?
Yeah, most of the teachers were pretty on board with the idea. So,
really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because originally it was a protest for the union. So they were pretty on board with it because they are part of the teachers union at the end of the day.
The teacher said just walk out of class so you could be...
Not necessarily, but there were some teachers that were like, it's a walkout, you guys can just go protest, go...
Now, there are some 600 organizations across the nation with about $2 billion operating revenue who have been organizing some 3,000 protests in different locations across the nation. One of the places that they're getting funding is from Neville Roy Singham. He's an American billionaire, or millionaire, I should say, a tech guy who supports far-left causes. He denies that he has any links to political parties, but he has participated in activities with the Chinese Communist Party, and his wife is a founder, is the founder of Code Pink. So you have the numbers out here. Classes are going to start letting out in Chicago public schools in a half hour, and buses are being provided so the students can come and supplement these numbers. So we've got big numbers already. I anticipate the numbers will grow.
Yeah, keep the kids out of school. That's what we really need in Chicago. Shameful mayor and shameful governor, both of them.
We bring in Daniel DiMartino. He grew up in Venezuela. He has experienced firsthand the consequences of socialism. He left in 2016, went on to obtain a PhD in economics, and is now a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Daniel, it's always good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. I know your grandparents left Italy and Spain. They went to Venezuela because at that time it was like a real, land of prosperity. They saw a ton of opportunity happening in Venezuela. That all shut down when Hugo Chavez was elected the year that you were born. You chuckled as we listened to this student together because Mike Tobin said, well, why does your teacher tell you not to go to class? And he said, well, because they're in the union. Yeah. And they wanted the day off, and they told all of us to come out here. What's your reaction to all this?
Well, that I'm very
Incredible.
familiar actually with the Chicago Teachers Union, because
Yeah.
the Chicago Teachers Union used to send their teachers to Venezuela to learn how to indoctrinate American students here to destroy the United States. So of course they're also telling the kids, come support us, because this is what the teachers unions have no right to get kids out of class to support their political activities. This should be investigated. I mean, this is illegal.
I mean, it's their job to teach students. They are failing students so dramatically in Chicago and other places across this country. For them to dare to take a day off when they are failing in their jobs. These kids are, I think, only 25% are proficient in reading and math in the public school system in Chicago. So, I mean, it's
And then they
mind-blowing,
say
but
they need more money, right? From taxpayers.
Always.
Pay raise.
More money is always a solution, and yet you see places where schools have a lot less money, and they're able to educate the students in their programs. But you know, I want to get to the root of something else that Mike Tobin was reporting here, because he was talking about. Everyone looks at this and goes, "What are these grassroots organizations?" No. There's a million groups behind this: the Democratic Socialists of America, the People's Forum, the Party for Socialist and Liberalism, Code Pink, funded by Neville Royce Singham, $2 billion and 600 groups.
Communists.
Talk to us about what you've learned about the organization. This is why all the signs tend to match.
So I have met many of the leaders of these organizations. Here in New York City, the leader of the People's Forum, Manolo de los Santos, originally from the Dominican Republic. They organized many events years ago.
Saul Alinsky radicals
So I went to actually protest
trained.
along with many other Venezuelans. I've seen the leader here in the U.S. of Code Pink, Medea Benjamin. She's been to Venezuela, received awards by Chavez. The Party of Socialism and Liberation is a Marxist-Leninist group that wants to turn America into Cuba, by the way. They're the ones that were part of the flotilla that just went to meet with the Cuban dictator. So what I want people to understand is that what this is a plot by the Chinese Communist Party. That's why it's funded from China, to destroy the United States from the inside. They want to lie to Americans so that they vote for politicians that will destroy our economy so that China wins. China doesn't believe in the ideas of socialism anymore. That's why they liberalize their economy, but they want America to fall for that so that China can dominate.
So, I mean, I really hope everybody was listening very closely to what you just said. Because these are not, just sort of students who, read Marxism in school and think that maybe it's a better system. This is very orchestrated, and there's a lot of evidence, a lot of reporting that points to China doesn't have to launch a war against us. They are doing this.
They can't beat us.
Exactly.
That's why they try to infiltrate us. And that is why we need the Department of Justice to investigate whether the DSA, the Party of Socialism and Liberation, Code Pink, People's Forum have received illegal money from abroad, from sanctioned countries, from dictators, from money launderers, narco-traffickers.
Yeah. I mean, you can destabilize the American system in all of these ways. It's very crafty, very surreptitious, and it's working. Let's take a look at the polls. The Gallup polls, 66% of Democrats say that they view socialism favorably. I mean, these numbers were nothing like this, certainly when I was growing up and even when you were growing up. 66%, 38%. Nearly 40% of independents view socialism favorably. And here's an example of it. The Seattle Democrat Socialist Mayor, Katie Wilson, who thinks it's hilarious that all of these major corporations, including Starbucks, who's just left for Tennessee, they're leaving her city. She doesn't care. Watch this.
I think the claims that millionaires are going to leave our state are like super overblown, and if the ones that leave, like, bye.
So she clearly has hate, disdain, I think is pretty clear there, for people who've become successful in the American system. And these companies, you've got Starbucks, Boeing, Amazon, they all left. Those people, so think about how many jobs they took with them.
Well, Martha, this is because socialists are not motivated by concern for the poor. They're motivated by hate for the rich. This is why Mamdani goes to Kevin Griffith's apartment and he doesn't go to Harlem or to the public housing projects to see how people are living under socialism. We have people living under socialism in America. The people who live in public housing, it's falling apart. We have socialist healthcare for the veterans, scandal for hospitals, people are dying in waiting lines. So they want socialism in America. It's not working.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel DiMartino's always enlightening. DiMartino, always good to have you with us. Thank you very much. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Mark.
So President Trump putting all options on the table after another round of negotiations with Iran appears to be falling apart as they failed to, they wanted to sort of shelve the idea of their nuclear weapons program and say, oh, let's just work on this straight. That didn't fly.
You had a CENTCOM commander come in here yesterday. Was he briefing you on a different approach, options? What kind of options? How would it look different?
I mean, do we want to go and just blast the hell out of him and finish him forever, or do we want to try and make a deal? I mean, those are the options.
Do you want to go blast the hell out of him?
I prefer not. On a human basis, I prefer not, but that's the option.
Retired Vice Admiral Robert Harward, former Deputy Commander of U.S. Central Command, joins me next.
Pro and college sports teams.
I can remember when Saul Alinsky was running the and overseeing with Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and the National Education Association. Unfortunately, they try to come into Kentucky, plant their seeds of disruption with students, even trying to teach us how to teach students to put gum on the floors and everything to disrupt the class systems. We don't need that in our educational systems. We need godly principles in our educational system. Now, the Kentucky Education Association was kind enough to award me as the outstanding citizen in the state of Kentucky promoting public education. And believe me, what I promoted was good teachers, good principles, good educational systems with godly principles, and restore the 10 Commandments to the walls and prayer in the schools. And then you'll have a school system that the grades increase, the math, science, English, and history, all the subjects, and keep the kids in school and keep them out of the sexual business one way or the other. Let their parents handle that, and in their churches. God bless you all. I hope you all enjoyed the program today. Now I'm 82 and still fighting for quality education and love and godly principles. Have a little humor, watch the funny pictures of me. You'll enjoy them. Love you all. John Stephenson, travels with Dr. John Stephenson, former Superintendent of Education, Commonwealth of Kentucky, former Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, Commonwealth of Kentucky, and Deputy Secretary of Transportation under a great governor, Martha Lane Collins, and former field representative for Congressman John Breckinridge and his field representative in the Congressional District, all of Fayette County in northern Kentucky. God bless you all, and God bless America, and God bless the Special Olympics, which I emceed for many, many years, and believe very heartedly, and keep all of northern Kentucky in godly principles.
The American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Republicans stood up for Americans. Democrats sat down for illegals. Thomas Massie sides with these radical left lunatics. Massie voted against finishing President Trump's wall. He voted against deporting criminals. On May 19th, fire Thomas Massie. You know, a guy like this loser Massie, he's a real loser. MAGA Kentucky is responsible for the content of this advertising.